Hey y'all, I'm your host, Aaron Smith of the Offshore Marine Service Association. Each Friday, I'll bring you the Offshore Briefing, a quick rundown of the week's notable developments, updates, and news you need to know in the offshore space. Whether you're on deck or at your desk, we're glad you're here. Welcome, everyone. This is another episode of the Offshore Briefing. It's great to have everyone back, and it's great to continue this process. You know, this has been a very interesting and learning-filled process for me, learning how to do this, but it's been very enjoyable. And I think, our last episode was possibly the most enjoyable part of starting this podcast for me. John and Cooper Fontenot are just great stories, and that I found myself really reinvigorated by how much they love our industry, and again showing what this industry can do for people. It was a great listen. If you haven't seen it, please go down, watch episode 5, which is the interview with John and Cooper Fontenot. I loved it. It was so much fun. Ashley Angel, did you have thoughts? And I'm sorry I didn't introduce you all. As with me as always are Ashley Smith and Angel Johnson. Welcome.
Hello. Yeah, they are just great. I hope everyone enjoyed it, and just a great kid, and what a wonderful father, and I love their story.
I agree. I think it was a really interesting story. And like I said, I think it was maybe last week or week before that on the Offshore Briefing. It just felt like a full circle moment from hearing John's story first and then seeing where his son is now. It's interesting and just a lot.
You're right. It is full circle. And I think one thing that kind of shows that, if anyone saw, we had to promote the episode. We have some pictures which are up on our Instagram account, Offshore America, all one word, Offshore America on Instagram. If you're not following it, you really should be.
Yes.
But kind of to show how full circle it is, we have a picture of John, in Cook Inlet, Alaska. It was the motor vessel Mustang Island, I'm sorry. And he's on the back deck holding a snowman. He's a kid from South Louisiana, probably one of the first times he saw snow there. And then we have a picture of Cooper Fontenot on the Odyssey Phoenix in Port Fourchon, also in snow from this year. Outloved it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. It is full circle. And it's just, again, it's a great evidence of all of the great careers that can be provided for in this industry. And so it's just a great.
Cooper just gave such a great outlook on how much being a mariner has changed, and how you can do so much while still working and achieve other goals, which I thought was really cool.
I like that as well. Yeah, it's, like John said, most of the people and he's in charge of hiring, so he knows, most of the people that come in because they love the lifestyle. But that does not preclude you from doing something else.
Which I realized I could never work offshore, because there was 3 that he said you probably need, and I failed all 3.
Yes. Well, yeah. Being a mariner does not preclude you, but other personality traits preclude yourself. That's the way you would say that. We're recording this episode, as we always do, on Thursday, the day before it will air. And before I get into my points on that, first, just let me really give some appreciation to Angel, who is editing all of the offshore briefings and getting them out quickly. I mean, yeah, I guess this will be the 4th offshore briefing we've done, and she's completely taught herself how to edit podcasts. That's pretty cool. Good job, Angel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you as well, because I actually have been enjoying the editing process more than I thought I would. And it's piqued my interest into new skills. So thank you for the opportunity.
Well, good. I love that attitude. Good. Thank you. But we're recording this on Thursday, May 22nd, which means we are recording this on National Maritime Day. And National Maritime Day is a federal day, not a federal holiday, but is a federally recognized. Say what?
I said it should be a federal holiday.
Should be. Yep. All those of us in the U.S. maritime industry should not have to work, and just the foreign mariners who try to exploit our laws should have to work. That's how we should do this.
That would be awesome.
Well, that would argue that many of the people who employ foreign mariners in U.S. waters would wish that every day was National Maritime Day if that was the case.
Oh, so they could. I
But
definitely.
so, was reading through the remarks that have been posted by the Secretary of Transportation and was looking at what was going on at MARAD headquarters. But, I saw two bits of news that I thought were more important than what happened at MARAD. Shockingly, I know. And that was yesterday, Secretary Nome at the commencement at the Coast Guard Academy announced that the president would be nominating Admiral Kevin Lundy to serve as the commandant. He's been serving as the designee or the temporary commandant currently, and he will now take that role officially if confirmed by the Senate. And then also in this, released Force Design 2028, which is a new plan for the Coast Guard. And it's interesting. We've been going over this a lot. I think there's a ton of good in here. If you are an AMSA member and went to DC with us, Mr. Sean Planky, who was the author of Force Design 2028, he is currently the advisor to Secretary Nome for Coast Guard matters. He released he created Force Design 2028, and he briefed us when we were on DC on it. It really tries to streamline the Coast Guard, and kind of paradoxically also increases the Coast Guard personnel in areas that are needed. And that's a total of 15,000 new coasties by the end of 2028. And also, if you are an AMSA member, we AMSA members have received a release with a full analysis of this workup.
And I have gotten lots of responses from that alert that I sent out. It's alert 36.25. And I have some really great feedback on people, questioning why they aren't talking about marine safety and how it's been an interesting conversation going back and forth. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, good point. Good point. It is always good to have feedback from our members on those. And it is interesting, I find, how much when we send out alerts, how many responses you get back. That's a good point. And also then the other thing I saw away from MARAD is that today in the Federal Register, the Federal Maritime Commission put out a request for comments detailing how flags of convenience, and Ashley, you can explain to our listeners what a flag of convenience is.
Well, a flag of convenience is when you register your vessel in a country that suits you.
Yes, sort of. It is a country that has made itself into be a location for registering of vessels, and it does so by providing tax advantages and usually regulatory advantages. Sometimes
I'm acknowledging I should not have agreed you asking me questions, just knowing that I don't know the answer. But the only reason I know this answer is because I'm working on an alert for the membership.
Well, I was fairly certain you would say something about a 7-Eleven there or something. So, but, I think it's interesting when you look at these flags of convenience, just how little oversight they have when you compare them to the Coast Guard. And so I know that AMSA will be submitting very detailed and very lengthy comments, and we'll be urging all of our members to do so as well, because we certainly see what flags of convenience do and how they allow a much less regulatory compliance cost for vessels that compete with AMSA member vessels. And that's just, those vessels from a safety perspective should not be working in U.S. waters. I always say risk does not have a flag. If there is a safety risk, then it is a risk if you're carrying a U.S. flag or a Liberian flag or a Vanuatuan flag or any other flag. That risk is the risk, and it should be managed equally. And so we will have a lot of comments. And again, if you're an AMSA member, look for the alert that will be coming out this after, or I guess I forget that we're in the future here. Look for the release that went out Thursday afternoon.
Correct. And I will say, getting into the depths of this alert or this submission request, if you will, it's really hopeful, honestly. They're calling out certain other organizations that put out their own guidelines, and they kind of call them not favorable and
Hmm.
not use. I don't want to be rude or mean, talk bad about anyone, but this is very hopeful for us, and they're asking for specific examples, which we'll highlight in the alert that we get out.
Yeah.
I think we have like years of examples, right?
Correct, but they need specific.
Well, I'm thinking of a vessel that I have pulled all of the flagging documents and all of the class documents on.
Yeah.
The vessel has a helideck on it. You can see it. It's right up front, but nothing in the class documents and nothing in the flag documents show that the vessel has a helideck on it. So it looks like it may not have even been ever inspected for someone. And that's an example of how a flag of convenience works. So I'm happy to provide, and
Yeah.
that's just one that I think of off the top of my head,
And that's just you. Imagine if every OMSA member submitted something, how we could really make a difference.
Great point. Great point. Really appreciate that. So, yeah, I think this will be interesting. We will be helping members submit comments, and please read the alert and follow the instructions there to help us submit some comments. So that was what I saw, the stories that I saw this week. What is everyone else seeing?
Well, thank you for asking, Erin. I'd like to bring up something very important and not at all maritime related. The Annabelle doll came to New Orleans. The Annabelle doll is the haunted doll that was in Connecticut. It's a rag doll. Since it's been here, a plantation has burned down, a garbage truck has crashed on the interstate, still closing it for days now, which is the part of the interstate that I need to get our children to and from school. 10 prisoners escaped jail. 5 are still just roaming around. Now the doll's in San Antonio, so I can't wait to see what happens there.
Well,
It's very fascinating. I went on a deep dive on it.
one, I think Charles Barkley would have some input on San Antonio portion of that, but two, I don't see how this is maritime related. Please, this is the offshore briefing. But I would wonder what one of our children would say about that garbage truck parked there on that off ramp. So, Angel, can you get us back on track here?
Yeah. Um, so I did some perusing in the Friday Fast Facts last week, and saw some interesting things. First, I actually just found out about this committee, so it's interesting that this has come up. But James Danley, he actually got approved as Deputy Energy Secretary, and he was previously federal regulator of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and I actually just found out about that agency at the crawfish boil, so I thought that I kind of piqued my interest. Something else was Representative Carbajal introduced the Mariner Exam Modernization Act, which amends the Coast Guard. Let me get this and get the name of it right. Coast Guard Authorization Act of 2016. So it's amending that to kind of modernize things. Erin, can you speak more about that?
Yeah. So just saw this legislation was introduced recently by, yes, Mr. Carbajal, a Democrat from California. He is the ranking member on the Coast Guard subcommittee within TNI, within Transportation Infrastructure. And then the legislation has a primary co-sponsor of Congressman Mike Ezell, who is the chairman of the Coast Guard subcommittee. And I think, kind of Bia, who addressed our DC roundtable and who is the legislative director for Mr. Ezell, talked about how the committee works in a bipartisan fashion. I think this really shows that. Yes, definitely agree that this is a necessary bill and have read through. I think it's obviously we need to reform the Coast Guard exams. There are so many of them. The questions really become outdated very quickly with the speed of how technology increases and the industry increases. And that's a good thing. So we do need to constantly be looking, one, at the exam system just in general, and then two, in the questions that are there. I would say, I have found that the law that this bill amends, it sets up this committee for review. And I would think that maybe there needs to be some more specificity in the underlying statute, not necessarily the bill that Mr. Carbajal and Mr. Ezel have introduced, but in the underlying statute, the committee is made up of one half of representatives from approved training facilities, meaning Coast Guard approved. That makes sense. Yeah. They're the ones conducting these courses, conducting these assessments. Yeah, they should definitely have a seat at the table. One half shall be representatives from the appropriate maritime industry. That's the part, that appropriate. I don't like when there are words like appropriate in the federal code.
Very subjective.
Exactly. I would rather it specify who is that. And, let's go again for the word of the day to full circle and talk about, that there's also one representative on this committee from the National Merchant Marine Personnel Advisory Committee, MRPAC. John Fontenot talks about how he sits on MRPAC. He is one of the presidentially designated representatives for MRPAC. And he talked about on last episode how there's often not a representative for the offshore industry on MRPAC, and that he only holds one seat of, I think, 21, 24, somewhere in there. So one representative of MRPAC, the appropriate maritime industries, I think this should be a little bit more spelled out and have more mariner voices on this committee. I think that they're the ones, like I said, training providers are the ones giving the test. Mariners are the ones taking the test. They should have a seat at this table to make sure that the tests are effective. So I think I applaud Mr. Carbajal and Mr. Ezel for introducing this legislation. I think it's something that is very needed and look forward to working with them as this bill. I assume this bill will get put into the Coast Guard Authorization Act. The text of this bill will get put in there. So we'll be working with them. And as I've said, Mr. Ezel's staff, BIA, is just so great to work with on these issues. So look forward to working with on this. So that was a great point and good callback to last week's Friday Fast Facts. And yeah, I do remember someone at the Crawfish Bowl from FERC. I can't remember who they were, but I knew it was someone that I think I worked with previously when I was up in DC. So yeah, it's a minor agency, but a very important one, especially as we get into offshore wind issues.
Good to know.
Well, I think that's all I have for this week. So please tune in again next week for another offshore briefing. We always look forward to providing these. It's a great resource. And again, if you're looking for more information like this, please read Friday Fast Facts. If you're not an OMSA member, please become one so you can have Friday Fast Facts. Who came up with this dumb name?
Not me.
Pretty sure it was me. But if you're not an OMSA member, please become one so you can have Friday Fast Facts, still can't say it, delivered to your inbox on a weekly basis. So if anyone has any input on the show, future guests, anything else, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you. But if y'all don't have anything else, we'll sign off here. Ashley, Angel, anything else? Not doll related?
I was just about to say, if anybody hears anything else but Annabelle, let me know.
So I noticed we don't say like, share, and subscribe enough at the end of the episode. So that's what I'll add. Like, share, and subscribe the podcast.
Good. Very good point. Download, I think, is in there as well. I think podcast track download metrics. So download as well.
Use all the terms the kids use.
Yes, the kids. Well, thank you again, everyone. Take care and be safe.
Happy Friday.
That wraps up another episode of Maritime in America. We're proud to highlight the voices and stories that keep the American offshore industry strong. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us, and remember, the course ahead is shaped by those who step up and steer it. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your crew. Tune in every Friday for your offshore briefing, and don't miss our next full episode, dropping soon with the very special guest's mariner's perspective. Catch you next time.